The Last Bus Stop, a true horror story. I still remember that night clearly. Even today, whenever I pass by that place, a strange chill runs down my spine. This happened in 2019, during the rainy season. At that time, I was working in Dhaka, and every few weeks I would travel back to my village in Mymensingh to visit my family. That night I had finished work very late. Because of that, I had to catch the last bus leaving the city. The journey took several hours, and by the time the bus reached my area, it was already 12:40 in the morning. The bus stopped at a small roadside station near my village. It wasn't really a proper bus terminal, just a broken concrete bench, an old rusty signboard, and a flickering street lamp that barely gave any light. The rain had just started again. Small drops of water tapped softly against the metal roof of the bus stop. When I stepped off the bus, the driver quickly closed the door and drove away. Within seconds, the sound of the engine faded into the distance. Suddenly, the road became completely silent. There were no cars, no people, nothing but the sound of rain and the wind moving through the trees. The woman at the bus stop. As I started walking toward my village road, I noticed something strange. Someone was sitting on the bench at the bus stop. At first, I hadn't noticed her because she was sitting very still in the shadows. It was a woman. Her long hair covered most of her face, and her head was slightly lowered as if she was staring at the ground. For a moment, I assumed she was just another traveler waiting for a bus. But then I realized something. There were no more buses that night. That had been the last one. I slowed down as I walked past her. The rain was falling softly around us. Just as I was about to leave the bus stop behind me, the woman suddenly spoke. Her voice was very quiet, almost like a whisper. "Excuse me, does this bus go to the city?" Her voice sounded strangely cold. I turned back and replied politely, "No, that was the last bus for tonight." For a moment she didn't say anything. She just sat there, completely still. Then I continued walking down the road. The footsteps. After a few minutes of walking, I began to feel uneasy. At first I thought it was just my imagination. But then I heard it clearly. Footsteps behind me. Soft, slow, but steady. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped too. I turned around slowly. And there she was. The same woman from the bus stop. She was walking behind me. Her hair was still covering most of her face. I forced a nervous smile and said, "Do you live nearby?" She looked up slightly. "I'm going with you." Her answer made no sense. My heart started beating faster. Something was wrong. I started walking faster. The road was empty, and the rain was getting heavier. After a few seconds, I looked back again. And this time I felt my blood run cold. She was much closer than before. But the strange part was something else. Something I didn't notice earlier. Her feet weren't touching the ground. She was moving forward slowly. But she wasn't walking. She was floating. My body froze for a second. Then instinct took over. I turned around and started running. The voice behind me. The road to my village was about 10 minutes away. But that night, it felt like the longest road in the world. The rain poured harder as I ran. Behind me, I could still hear something moving. Not footsteps anymore. Just a strange sliding sound. Then I heard her voice again. Much closer this time. "Stop. Didn't you say you would take me home?" Her voice sounded different now. Deeper. Almost angry. I didn't look back. I kept running as fast as I could. The truth. Finally, I reached the first house in my village. I ran straight inside my home and slammed the door shut behind me. My parents woke up immediately and asked what had happened. but I was too terrified to explain anything that night. The next morning, I told several villagers about what I had seen. When they heard the story, their faces became serious. One of the older men in the village sighed and said, "You saw her, didn't you?" I asked what he meant. He told me something I will never forget. About 7 years earlier, a woman had been standing at that exact bus stop late at night, waiting to go to the city. But when the bus arrived, the driver lost control on the wet road. The bus skidded, and the woman was killed instantly. Since then, many people have claimed that sometimes, late at night, a woman can be seen sitting alone at that bus stop, waiting for the last bus that will never come. Even today, whenever I return home late at night, I make sure of one thing. I never look at that bus stop anymore. Ghost. The Man in the Attic, a true horror story. This happened to me when I was 16 years old. At that time, my family had just moved into an old 2-story house on the edge of a small town. The house was cheap compared to others in the area, but my parents thought it was a great deal. The house was quiet, surrounded by tall trees and far from the busy city. At first, everything seemed normal. But after a few weeks, strange things started happening. Strange noises at night. Almost every night, around 2 or 3 a.m., I would hear something coming from above my bedroom ceiling. At first it sounded like soft footsteps. Sometimes it was like someone slowly dragging something across the floor. Our house had a small attic above the second floor, but my father told us no one ever went up there. We didn't even have a proper ladder to reach it. So I tried to convince myself that the sounds were probably rats or squirrels. But deep down, I knew something felt wrong. Because the sounds didn't move like animals. They sounded like human footsteps. Slow, careful, almost as if someone was trying not to be heard. The first sign. One morning I woke up and noticed something strange in the kitchen. One of the cabinets was slightly open. My mom asked if I had taken snacks during the night. I said no. My father thought maybe someone forgot to close it. But the same thing happened again the next day. And the day after that. Food would disappear slowly. Bread, fruit, even leftovers from dinner. At first, we thought maybe one of us was forgetting. But then something happened that changed everything. The footprint. One rainy afternoon, I came home from school earlier than usual. My parents were still at work. As I walked into the house, I noticed wet footprints on the hallway floor. They weren't mine. And they weren't my parents'. The footprints led from the hallway, straight to the attic door. My heart started pounding. I stared at the small attic hatch in the ceiling. It was slightly open, but I was sure it had been closed before. For several minutes I just stood there, staring at it. Then I slowly backed away and left the house. I waited outside until my parents came home. The terrifying discovery. That night my father finally decided to check the attic. He grabbed a flashlight and a ladder and climbed up slowly. My mother and I waited downstairs. For about 30 seconds, everything was silent. Then suddenly my father shouted, "Someone been living up here." My blood froze. When he came down, he told us what he saw. Inside the attic there were old blankets, empty food wrappers, and water bottles. Someone had clearly been hiding there, living above our heads, watching us, listening to everything we did. We immediately called the police. The final horror. The police searched the attic carefully, but the person hiding there was already gone. The officer said something that still haunts me today. He said the person had probably been living there for weeks, maybe months. But before leaving, the officer noticed something strange. There was a small hole in the attic floor. a tiny hole that looked directly down into my bedroom. Someone had been watching me sleep every night. After that, we moved out of the house within a week. But sometimes I still wonder about something. The police never found the person who had been living in our attic. And sometimes late at night, I still wake up feeling like someone is watching me from the ceiling. The night shift security camera, a true horror story. This happened in 2020, when I was working as a night shift security guard at a small warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The job itself was simple. The warehouse stored electronics and furniture, and my duty was to monitor the building from a small security room during the night. There were 16 security cameras placed around the building. Most nights were quiet. Nothing happened except the occasional stray dog walking past the gate. But one night, something appeared on the cameras that I will never forget. The quiet night. It was around 2:20 a.m. The warehouse was completely silent. The lights inside the building were off, except for a few dim emergency lights. I was sitting in the security room watching the camera monitors. Usually I passed time by drinking tea or scrolling on my phone. But that night, something on one of the monitors caught my attention. Camera 7 showed the back storage hallway, and I was sure I saw something move. At first I thought maybe it was a shadow or a camera glitch. But then I saw it again. A dark shape slowly moved across the hallway. The empty hallway. I leaned closer to the screen. The hallway should have been completely empty. No one else was supposed to be inside the building. All the doors were locked. But suddenly, a figure appeared on the camera. It looked like a person standing at the end of the hallway. The strange thing was that the figure wasn't moving. It just stood there, completely still. I grabbed my flashlight and the building keys. Part of my job was to check suspicious activity. So I decided to go look. Checking the hallway. As I walked through the warehouse, the sound of my footsteps echoed through the large empty space. The building felt colder than usual. I reached the hallway that was shown on camera 7. I turned the corner and pointed my flashlight down the hall. Nothing. The hallway was empty. No person. No movement. Just a long corridor with stacked boxes and metal shelves. I felt relieved and assumed the camera had malfunctioned. So I went back to the security room. The camera footed. When I sat back down, I looked at the monitor again. My stomach dropped, because the figure was still there, standing at the end of the hallway, exactly where it had been before. But I had just been there, and there was no one. I stared at the screen in confusion. Then something happened that made my hands go cold. The figure on the camera slowly turned its head and looked directly into the camera. The impossible movement. I leaned closer to the screen. The hallway camera didn't have audio, but I could see clearly what was happening. The figure started walking. Slow. Unnatural. Almost like its body was stiff. But the strange part was the direction. It wasn't walking down the hallway. It was walking toward the camera and toward my security room. My heart started beating faster. I quickly checked another monitor. Camera 3 showed the main corridor leading to my room. The figure appeared there, moving closer. The knock. Within seconds, the figure reached the camera outside the security room. But I still couldn't see it clearly. It looked like a tall shadow standing just outside the door. Then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Knock. 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 Someone was knocking on the security room door. But the monitors showed something impossible. The figure outside the door had no face. just a dark, empty shape where the face should have been. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knocking continued for almost 30 seconds. Then it suddenly stopped. The final footage. After a few minutes of silence, I slowly looked back at the monitors. The hallway cameras were empty again. The figure was gone. I stayed in that room until sunrise. The next morning, I showed the footage to my manager. But something strange had happened. The camera recording from that night was missing. Completely gone. As if nothing had ever appeared on the cameras. I quit that job 2 days later. But sometimes I still think about that night. Because the last thing I remember before sunrise was looking at the monitor one final time and seeing a message written on the screen reflection behind me. 3 words. I see you, ghost.